Okay, y'all, this is section 6.3, angles on a coordinate plane. So in case you don't remember about the coordinate plane, this is your x-axis and this is your y-axis. This is quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. So start here and go counterclockwise. Whenever we plot angles, you always line one side up here on the positive x-axis. I'm going to write that. So we always line angles up so that one side lies along the positive x-axis. So that's right here. So you can see that. Okay. And then your angle can either rotate up to be a positive angle or it can rotate down to be a negative angle. So let's write that. Up. Angles can rotate up. So it starts here and then this second section rotates up. I guess I don't need an arrow there. In a positive, what's that, counterclockwise direction, or it can rotate down in a negative clockwise direction, or rotate down. So starting here, but instead of opening up, it curves down in a negative clockwise direction. All right, and then two more things. You don't really need to know this vocabulary word, but this side right here, this where you start on the positive x-axis, is called the initial side. We're not really going to use that word much, but you do need to know that this side, the other part of my angle is, and down here, is called the terminal side. So that's terminal, and that's terminal. So hopefully that, yeah, you can see that. Okay, perfect. And one last thing before I show you examples of what we would do in class. Let's go back to this quadrant or this graph. If I started here and didn't open up at all, that'd be 0 degrees. If I rotated and I'm opening directly straight up here, that's 90 degrees. If I keep rotating around and so I have a completely flat line, so this angle here, that's 180. If I keep rotating and point down instead, so I open all the way down, that's 270. And then if I rotate all the way around and end up back where I started, that's 360. So these are all positive numbers. I could just reverse everything to get negative numbers. Open down, negative 90, backwards, negative 180, up, negative 270, and then back to where I started. If I open down to get there, it'd be negative 360. So, okay, so how are you going to see this on a test? What am I going to ask you there? I'm going to give you some angle measurements and then say in what quadrant would this angle lie. So you need to know your way around from 0, 90, 180, 270. And then you also need to know your quadrants, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let's do 2 examples. Okay, so example 1, we'll just call this part A because it's the same thing. In what quadrant would an angle of 187 degrees lie? Oh gosh. Okay, so you may be able to do this without drawing a picture, but it helps me to draw a picture. So if I draw my picture and think, okay, so it's got to start here. I am opening, this is a positive number, so that means I'm going to open up to get to my 187. If I open straight up here, remember this is 90 degrees, so I need to keep going. If I open all the way back here, this is 180. And if I open all the way down to here, that's 270. So 187 is between 180 and 270, so it's going to be somewhere like, you don't really have to draw your angles accurately. So it'd be somewhere like this. You don't have to draw the angle, but just realize 187 is between 180 and 270. And remember, this is quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4. So our answer here is quadrant 3. Done. Same idea if I said, what about negative 120 degrees? So same question, in what quadrant would an angle of negative 120 degrees lie? You would, well, I would draw a picture. You may be able to do it in your head. So it's got to start here. And this time it's a negative number, so that means I'm going to open down. If I open straight down, this would be negative 90. If I go all the way around backwards, this is negative 180. 120 is between negative 90 and negative 180, so it's somewhere around here. So again, oh, that's, you still count quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4. Don't change the order you count just because you're opening down. So this answer again is quadrant 3. Okay, so I could ask you a straightforward question that would just be 1 point on a test. In what quadrant would the angle lie? And you draw your picture if you need to, and figure it out. One more thing we're going to do on this video is also talk about coterminal angles. So coterminal angles are two angles that have the same terminal side, like they're in the same exact position, but they have different angle measurements. Let's just write that. Okay, so coterminal angles. They're in the exact same position. They have the same terminal side. I guess it can be more than two angles, but angles in the exact same position. They have the same terminal side, but they have different measurements. So you can think about it like on a watch. If you think about it like military time, 0200 and 1400, they look the exact same on this type of watch because your hands are in the same spots. But those are two very different things. Like one's in the middle of the night and one's in the middle of the day. If you want a more like mathy example, you could think about, let's use this angle here. This angle versus this angle. They look like the exact same thing. The only way you can tell them apart is if I draw this little curly cue to tell you, oh, I'm going to open up to 270 degrees, or if I say, oh, let's make this one where I actually opened down to negative 90 degrees. So they're coterminal angles. They have two different measurements, but if I didn't have this little picture, this little curve drawn there, you couldn't tell them apart. So I'm going to ask you to find coterminal angles. Luckily, there's a really quick way to do it. It's found by adding or subtracting 360. So found by adding or subtracting 360 degrees. Because there are 360 degrees in a circle, and you're just winding it around again, or you're winding it around backwards. So, okay, so let's do one example of that, and then I have a second video for you to watch after this. So. Example 2, let's say find 2 positive angles and 2 negative angles that are coterminal with negative 81 degrees. So you don't have to draw these pictures. I'm going to draw them just to maybe help give you an idea of what's going on, but you don't have to draw them. So first, negative 81 degrees, you know, you always start here on the positive x-axis. It's negative, so it's opening down, and it's not quite to my negative 90. So negative 81 is like somewhere here. So a coterminal angle, I can find it, let's just do the math first. I can find it by adding and subtracting 360. So negative 81, if I added 360 to that, I would get 279. I could plot 279 if I wanted to. It starts here, it's positive, so it's going to open up to 90, 180, 270, 279. So it should be in the same position as that one. It's just got my curl going in a different way. I need to find a second positive angle. So I'm going to take that 279 and add another 360 to it. If you do that, you should get 639. And if I wanted to plot this one, I would start here and I would go 90, 180, 270, 360, plus 90, plus 90. Sorry guys, I can't do this in my math in my head that quickly. Either way, you end up curling all the way around. You do a full loop and then go around again to get to 639. So these should be in the same position. This one just has extra loop-de-loops. You do the math of counting around if you want to. So, okay, so those are my 2 positive angles. I need to find 2 negative angles. So go back to your original one, because if I subtract 360 from here, I'm just going to get back here. So that's not a negative angle. So go back to your negative 81 degrees, and this time subtract 360. So negative 81 minus 360 is negative 441. So if I plot this one, it starts on the positive x-axis. I'll go down negative 90, negative 180, negative 270, negative 360, negative 441. And then one more. Oh, you couldn't see anything I was doing there. Sorry, guys. And then for my last negative angle, though, I think you'll get it if you don't already. Negative. I need to subtract 360 from this angle. So negative 441 minus 360 gives me negative 801. And if you wanted to plot it, you don't have to plot any of these. I was just doing it to try and give you a visual. So if I wanted to plot it, there we go. Start here in the positive x direction. I end up going a full loop around again, and then this extra little bit to get to negative 801. So all 4 of these, let's see if I can zoom out. Yeah, all 5 of these angles actually should look like they're in the same position, but they're different angle measurements, and the only way for you to tell is by looking at your loops, or if you actually had the numbers written beside them. So these are all coterminal angles.